Has always been, well, what do we do with the other 1.5 story down the street that says it's listed at 2,000? Ours is listed at 2,000, but when we go in measurement, it's only 1,600. So now we're wondering, okay, so how do we make up this, or how do we figure out this value difference, so to speak? Because there's square footage still there. So that's kind of a quandary that we're kind of in right now. When it comes to the 7 feet, when you're looking at the report, most of you have probably seen an appraisal report, I hope, because I didn't bring one. And in the above grade area, everything that's 7 feet and above can go in that area. So when we're measuring, we'll measure out to here. At 7 feet, it could be here, it could be here, it could be the top of the ceiling. I did one just recently to where none of the above grade area could go in that area. So how we're currently addressing that is say, hey, okay, it was actually like 5'5" or 6'5" at the peak, right? But I still couldn't count it, and it was down to 4 feet on the edges. But we can take that square footage and we can put it in the below grade area, and portions of that we can say, hey, there's room up here that's finished. It's heated, it's livable, it's got ingress, egress, and it's perfect space for a bedroom and a bathroom, which was the other excuse me. The other instance on this property, it had the bathroom and a bedroom upstairs. I couldn't even count them in the report as a bedroom and a bathroom. So, you know, the listing agent was not very happy, but we still made things happen. And so because we can put that in the bottom of the report and we can look at this as functioning livable space, or I should say functioning finished space, and most appraisers, what they're saying is, most of the guys in our company, and we say that, hey, this is livable, and if we find something else that has the same kind of function, then we'll use the same kind of square footage adjustment, or a little bit less, or however that pans out on how we figure it out by using the other comparables in the market area to decipher what that's going to represent, okay? So in talking about that, go back to that 7 foot again. So I can include that attic space up there if it's 7 feet and above. Now, remember I said it used to be 5 feet and above we could include. There's a space in there between 7 feet and 5 feet that we can put in that report as long as that area up there is over 50% of the attic space. Does that make sense? So if I've got 100 square, let's say I got 1,000 square feet, right, of attic space, and it's not all 7 feet and above, okay? And I come and I measure it and I bring it in on the sides because it'd be so much easier to have a dry erase board. Come in the sides, and let's say by taking it in from 7 feet and above, I've got 750 livable space because that's all above 7 feet, right? And there's a space between 5 feet and above, right, that's probably like maybe another 100 feet. And then you got the space that's 5 foot and below. I can't even put that in the report. It's not even included whatsoever. But that 5 feet and above, because I'm over 50%, I can put all that in the above grade livable space. That makes sense.
You're going to see that mostly in the older homes then, with the walls that kind of go like that.
Yes, a lot of overhome. If you do a lot of stuff in Tacoma, I mean, that's the most notorious place for me personally right now, because that's where it's all happening at for me. You know, some downtown Olympia and stuff like that, but for the most part, it is older homes. It's all 1.5 stories. Some people market their homes as 2 stories, and they're still 1.5 stories the way they lay out, which is fine. I mean, that's basically more semantics than anything else. Yeah. You know, but did everybody get that part? Understand it? Do you have a question?
There's if the highest point of that pitch is 6'5" or something like that, it's all under 7 feet, but there's a finished bedroom and a bathroom. Are you saying that there's some, it can be considered usable space but not livable space, or it's not?
Right.
I don't understand that.
Okay, well, it's, you have it, let's put it this way, you have a garage, all right, and your garage is a 2-car garage, and it has a finished bathroom in there. And my house down the street has a garage, but it doesn't have a bathroom in it. Yours is marketably superior than mine. So it functions better, and it represents a more market appeal, right? So it's the same thing as if you got this bedroom and bathroom. Even though I can't count it in a report, a person's going to go and they're going to say, hey, that's great. My kid can live up here. There's a bathroom up here. I don't ever have to see the teenager for the whole week. I'm good to go. Well, so that's a market appeal. So we still put that in the report and reflect it. These are things that we put in a different place and say, hey, it's got this, it's got that, it's got this. And if you got the same house down the street that doesn't have that, this has got more market appeal than that one. So obviously, because it's got more market appeal, you've got these items that you can discuss and represent.
So it has a higher value, but it loses the square footage and the number of bedrooms.
Than that in that particular one down there. So when you're looking at a report, it's not like you say, hey, this house is this house is this. This has got a bathroom, so it's worth $20 million more. That's not kind of how it works because we do more than one comparable, and you've just kind of got this range that you're working with and say, because of this is why I think this is here, kind of thing. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's still reflected in the report, just not on the market grid. Okay, in the above grade market area, right? Go ahead.
With 50%, as you said, 711. So what's the difference between the rules 5.5 and 7 feet? Because it's still going to be.
What's the difference between 5 and 7 feet?
Yeah, because if you add that 50% to your 7-foot rule, you're still most of the time going to get the same 5.5. No?
Well, okay, so if you got
1 to 10 options.
yeah, it's kind of really funky. It's easier to see it than it is to try to discuss it. So if you've got a wall,
Whiteboard if you want. Someone want to grab a marker?
I'd need a dry marker.
They're right behind a computer.
Is it? Okay, yeah, here we go.
You can just erase it, but just hang on to the board when you erase it.
Okay.
It was originally under 7 feet that was applied. But if it was originally
Okay, so if you've got an attic, right, and it's like this, and your peak is 7 feet, and this slopes, right, and let's say these walls come down 4 feet. If they come down 4 feet on a general slope, you're probably going to come in and say, okay, 5 foot is about right there. So this area is non-usable area, and you can't reflect that in the report, okay?
but 50% of the top still counts as a
So if this is 7 foot here, okay, and from here to here is 5 foot, and in between here, because it's this space, okay, is over 50%, right? Then you can count this space here all as usable space.
Behind the pony walls too?
No, these aren't pony walls. This is just, I'm just trying to show where the 5 foot mark is,
I got you.
okay? I'm not a great drawer, but I hope that it's...
Yeah, so but in this case, the rules between 5.5 and 7 foot, it does not work on this property because it's still going to count as a 5.5 feet
5 feet,
or 5 feet.
right.
But if the pitch would be under 7 feet, there would be no count of whatsoever.
Okay, so if this was 6.5 feet,
Yeah.
6.9 feet, any of that, this would not be counted as in the above grade in the report.
I'm just saying
Okay.
50%, that's basically doesn't make any difference if it's 7 and above.
Right, and that's why I said I had a 1.5 story that I couldn't include any of that space. Okay, has everybody here seen an appraisal report?
Yeah.
You know how you put the room count? You've got like 6 rooms, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, and then right below that is where you put the square footage of the home, correct? Anything that's above 7 feet and above can go in that space, okay? Everything else, it has to be put somewhere else in the report and reflected. Not always will that be included as as fully marketable space, as livable space, like the rest of the home that's in the top of the grid there. Some of that may change because of the height. Some of that may change because of the functionality. Same, like with the bathroom and the bedroom up there. I couldn't put the bathroom and bedroom in that count upstairs. It had to be down below. Okay, so appraisers are working around it by trying to put that in a different portion of the report and still giving marketable, because there's marketable value to that area, still giving value. Where we come to the issue is that because we're in this changing period, most of the homes that I'm comparing it to don't always do that. So it makes it more challenging to the appraiser to try and figure out.
It's the same size house, but one of them is, like you said, 2,000 square feet, and this new one is only going to be 1,600 square feet. But they're really the same house.
That's crazy.
And
Yes.
It doesn't work to the existing house? To the existing?
To the comparable?
Well, I mean, if the house is 1950, it was always 2,000 square feet.
Right.
So after you, it's basically 1,600 square feet.
Yes.
Something to remember on my fix and flips when I'm putting livable space in the attic.
Right.
I just have that. I just built a detached garage with an office, just like you were describing there.
Uh-huh.
At 7 feet.
So it's a very common issue that appraisers are addressing right now that makes it difficult for us. Not that we can't figure everything out, it's just because these are the homes that we're having to deal with that haven't recently sold or they're not marketed correctly. No fault to an agent, it's just because of the change in the plan, because they're not being measured. So that's the biggest thing for these types of homes.
So as a best practice for realtors that are listing homes, what do we need to look out for and change with how we're marketing these properties to make your job easier and get the value that we need?
Right. Well, I mean, you could go up and measure the attic if you wanted to. I know that our company used to have a service. I don't know if we do it anymore. But where we would go out and measure some pretty magnanimous houses because the agents wanted us to do that for them, and then that's what they would use as a listing. You know, you can do that. You can go in and measure yourself to kind of get an idea. You know, especially if you're just going down a rectangle, you go up along the thing and you measure down the 7 feet, and you measure in and say, okay, I'm going to be okay here, or hey, this is where I think I'll be at.
Yeah.
Kind of thing, just guesstimation. You know, noting that in your listing. I mean, I don't know. I see most of the stuff I see is it's just, here's what county says, this is where we think it's at, and this is what it looks like, this is what we're going to go with. Or that's what the last agent did, the last appraisal, you know, which is a lot of things that we get. Okay.
So as a rule of thumb, if it has 7 foot at the peak, then we just need to measure out to where that 5 foot is, right? And then use that rectangular.
As long as that area is
more than 50%, yeah.
50%.
Yeah, it is kind of, I mean, I understand it's very confusing.
Yeah.
You know, I got to be honest, I measured a couple of homes and went back and said, okay, no, wait a minute, let me do this again, and read the reg again, and so it is very confusing because we've been doing things a certain way for so long. It's hard to the old guy to learn new stuff, but we're working on it, right?
Well, when we're dealing with a homeowner that's like, no, that's livable
Exactly.
space. I paid for livable space 5, 10, however long ago, years ago.
Right.
Why can't we market that as livable space?
Exactly.
I have to be the messenger and the bad news guy and say, well, it's not X amount of feet high.
All yours.
Yeah.
Better you than me.
So if the height is 7 feet at the peak, so that's basically the whole thing is 0.
No, not necessarily, because even if it depends on how it's laid out. I mean, if you're 7 feet right across here, and that's the peak of your roof, okay, then you're good. If you're 7 feet here, you're probably running into some issues, okay? And I'm just here to make you aware of it.
Yeah.
All right, so you guys know that when you're talking to your seller, and it's like, hey, this didn't happen, so.
Can you explain how do you measure that 50% of that picture? So if that's a 7 foot how do you measure? So what's the measurement?
Okay, so it's 7 feet, which would be this mark here, right? This area has to be bigger than the overall square footage of the attic. Okay? 7 feet and above. So if you have 1,000 square feet, if it's 525 square feet at the 7 foot, that's 50%. Right? Okay, did I get that? I knew that one would take a while. All right. So I hope nobody's on it has this listing here, but
So when you get ready to talk on the screen, we got to share screen.
okay, go ahead.
So,
I had the house that I had mentioned earlier that had all those issues. First of all, 7 foot issue. Very fortunate on this one that the 7 foot was over 50%, so I was able to count the 5 feet and above, right? And it ended up being pretty close to the actual measurement that county had. And typically on a rectangle, when you go upstairs and you just have those rectangles, you don't I mean, you're not that far off, you know, at least with the 5 foot and above. But now, again, the things are changing. So that was one of the issues that I had to address. The other issue was when you have all these different factors dealing with a property, lenders want to see you find those factors, if at all possible. And if you can't, tell them why. I mean, we can go back in time to find some of those. We can expand the market out. There are different things that we do in order to find homes that are similar, that meet all your attributes. So this was a pretty small house, even though it's a 1.5 story. It's only about 1,000 square feet. Pretty small. It was updated. It was on Arterial Road. Usually when I open up in Tacoma, I've been doing this for so long, I know the arterial roads. So this one happened to be pretty easy because there was one right down the street that was on our arterial road. So it pretty much answered that question really quick. And then I found another one over on Tacoma Avenue. But the big issue on this one, the one that I faced the most, was this has a 1,100 square foot detached building, and the portion of it, the main portion, is a 2-car garage, and you could probably put 4 cars in there, maybe 6. So that portion was really large, and then they had another, probably used to be the other garage previously. We used to be a 2-car garage. They converted that. They just put a low-grade finish, drywall on the inside, electricity, concrete floor, and they were using it as a business. So finding that type of structure with a small house in Tacoma, small house is pretty typical in Tacoma, but finding that additional structure, you got to kind of expand out a little bit. And that's kind of what we do. We try to say, okay, Tacoma in itself, in the south side, it's pretty typical, pretty much the same, except especially if I'm an individual that's coming to you as an agent and saying, hey, I want a house, and here's my priority. I want a large detached garage. And my wife wants to run a business, so I need that too. So, you know, when we do that, when we have our clients come in, we always know that narrows down our market. It does the same thing to an appraiser. It narrows down our market to say, okay, these are the type of properties we want to look for. And I'm not going to find one property and throw that in the report and say, hey, yeah, here we go. So all of these sold for $300,000, and this one sold for $400,000. Mine's worth $400,000. Have a nice day. It doesn't work like that. It would be my job a lot easier if it did. But so I kind of go in the same area. I don't work by MLS areas. I have found that sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. I think most people are more about looking for something more so than they are all the time to say, I want this area. And when it comes to this type of property, I'm not talking about, hey, I got kids, I want to live in this development across the street from the elementary school. Okay, I'm talking about somebody who wants this type of property. And when you look at this type of property, your market expands out. I do a lot of stuff in Roy, Yelm, both on county lines. And I learned very early on by a lot of more senior appraisers than me that says, why aren't you crossing the county lines? I'm like, well, Pierce County is Pierce County, and Yelm's Yelm. He goes, yeah, but when somebody's looking for this type of property, you can go on both sides of the water, you know, because they're in that area, they're looking for that type of property. So when I was looking for this type of property, I had to expand out my market area in order for me to look for an additional structure of this magnitude. And a lot of times on the listings, we don't get to see where there's nothing really written down. I mean, people would, this listing treated this one as a, let me see if I can pull it up here, find the mouse. Mouse is not moving. So as you can see, this listing has this, if you're on here and this is your listing, I'm sorry, but no.
Actually, there's somebody sitting in online that you just did one of their appraisals.
I hope it was a good one. And if it was there's another Marshall out there, by the way, if it was a bad one.
She said it came in that value. Thanks for that.
Yeah. So as you'll see here, This just says 3-car garage, and I want to note something here. It says carport detached driveway parking. This property doesn't have a carport on it. So why that says carport detached, I have no idea. This garage is not a 3-car garage. So why it says 3-car garage, I have no idea. So as an appraiser, that makes my job much more difficult because I'm looking at the structure. There's really not a lot. There's some great pictures. There were some pretty decent pictures online that kind of gave me an idea, but it looked a lot bigger than a 3-car garage. And then it does say that there's a studio attached, but it's, like I said, it's more of a finished space, but that person right now is using it as a studio. And when I say studio, I think of a studio as where somebody's living. There's a little kitchenette in there, and it's not that. It's more like an artist type studio, okay? And so that factor right there of having this, and if you're an appraiser, you don't do any research before you go out. You get out, and you're not a happy appraiser, right? And that's the same thing with the 1.5 stories. It's really driving a lot of appraisers. I'll come back. It drives a lot of appraisers crazy because it's just you go out there, and this is the size of your house, but it's not, you know. So. This was probably, out of this property, even though it was a small house, this is probably, I consider this to be my biggest factor. You know, because a small house on a lot in Tacoma on an arterial road, that's like doing a plat. It's just like finding a house in the plat. It's not that big of a deal because there's tons of arterial roads, tons of what I call neighborhood access roads, a little bit busier, things like that. But when you've got an attribute like that on a small lot, it's more difficult. So we have to take our parameters and we have to expand them out. A lot of time we do it in distance so we can accommodate what the lenders are asking for us to do, number one, but most of all, what the market is expecting us to do. And so the market is expecting us to, if I brought this house and I did an appraisal and I didn't have anything that had remotely close to what this was, or even a couple of detached garages, you know, to say, hey, they're similar to this type of person was looking for that. I mean, I would be pretty up as a seller or a buyer, you know, and as an agent. But hey, you're not even reflecting this, what's going on. And especially if it came in low, then you'd really be talking to me. So whenever we have something like this, we expand our market out so we can find those different attributes. And that's what I had to do this one. So I did have to go on the other side of I-5 from this property. This property, I don't know if you know the area that well, Pacific 84th. It's down by 512 I-5 area. And I had to go up pretty close to the Tacoma Mall area to find a property that was almost identical to this. And it just sold. It's like, it's made it almost a snapper, you know. But we were about, I would say about 2 miles away. And again, even though you're going a different distance, now I want to be careful here, even though you're going a longer distance, to me, that market area is similar to where my market area was at. Now, if you notice where I was in southeast Tacoma. If you go a little bit further over, you're in a place called Midland. Midland runs homes on acreage, and that's, to me, that's a different type of market. That type of market is looking for this property that wants more land. They don't want a little compressed thing and get on this type of property. They want something a little bit more. Barns are bigger, detached garages are bigger. A lot of newer homes over there that are really large, that type of thing. And then if you go a little bit further, you got Canyon Road, that gets over in Puyallup, which to me is superior area even to where we're at.
So it's better to go a little wider range than try to make adjustments on things that are closer. Is that correct?
No, you're going to do both.
Okay.
The fact that I'm just trying to address right now is as an appraiser, we have to find something that's similar to this structure that we can use that a person would probably look at as a similar property, because we're trying to find comparable properties, that is in our market, so we can say, hey, this is where the marketability is for this home. That make sense?
Yeah.
So,
as an appraiser, what do you think a reasonable distance from the subject property?
well, that's a good question. So where I went, I thought was reasonable. However, if I would have went over to the Midland area, I think it would have been a push. Because over in Midland, if you look, Midland's dealing with all larger acreage homes. Now, I'm not saying I wouldn't go over there if I didn't have anything, but I'm just saying that it's a different area. Okay, it's not quite as comparable as a small lot, house, large structure when you've got 1 to 4 acres, nice site. It could be a small house, but then you've got all these larger structures. Different market.
Kelly was saying that you appraised her house in Clearwood, and you did comps outside of Clearwood.
Yes. So you have to. That's kind of a requirement. Let me be careful when I say this. We're required to use homes in a development. If we have to go outside of that development, we have to say why. Okay? And so, like I said at the very beginning, you know, we go into a tract home, tract development. You got 5 homes that are all the same, and they're all recently sold. Great comps. It's like, oh, great, this is done. You send it to the lender, and the lender says, no, I want something outside of the plat. So outside of the plat not only just addresses what it's doing inside that development, but it addresses what you're doing in the area. So lenders like to see that. Clearwood is different. Clearwood is its own entity. It's a place down, I don't know if you know, it's a place down in South Yelm, and it's gated, everything's built around this development, and I mean, I'll pull comps all day long. It's such a precise area. It's very large. There's enough market activity in that area to say that this is what a house should fit at, or market value at. Does it make sense? So so you have those situations quite often. Another place is Tehela, up in Bonnie Lake. Tehela's Tehela. It's so large in magnitude, and there's so many different builders and so many different product that you shouldn't have to leave Tehela to make a point or not make a point.
Do you have to use the majority of your comps inside that area, like Clearwood area, and then maybe do 1 or 2 outside of Clearwood?
So typically what I do is I will look at, because Lawrence Lake and Clearwood are 2 similar property locations down there. So I'll look at, but the thing about Lawrence Lake is Lawrence Lake's lots are a little bit bigger, but yet they have the same lake access and all that, and they're not gated. And so I'll look in both areas to see what the market's saying for these particular homes. And sometimes I have to go over there because Clearwood has a lot of small homes. And so the bigger homes, you got to kind of go out. I've done Clearwood and used acreage properties because there were no larger homes in Clearwood that were currently listed or sold within the last year. It's you're talking 1,600 to 1,200 is pretty much the norm. 1,600 way on the big side for Clearwood. There's very few large homes down there. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions?
One quick question.
Sorry.
When it comes to being in the same area like Tahale or something similar to that, how much weight do you guys put towards one builder as opposed to the next builder?
Well, when it comes to builders, it's more about what are they putting in the homes. Because, builders, even though it's the same builder, sometimes will just get a starter development going, and then he'll start adding as he goes along and builds up. So by the time he gets down here, he's got the same product that the guy says, well, I'm just going to come in and just pile everything in, right? So there are instances where you can do that, but Tehela's pretty close. Unless you're talking about the low spectrum and the high spectrum.
So really it just comes down to the level of finish and the product that they're putting in the home, more so than D.R. Horton or Mainview. It really just comes down to, okay, D.R. Horton might be a lesser builder, higher volume, but now they're putting in higher quality, similar to a Mainview, so we value them similarly as long as all the other factors are similar, square footage, lot size, etc.
However it's being built.
Okay.
You have to look at the complete home. And I'm not going to go and say, well, this one's got granite and that one's got quartz, and wow, there's a big, huge market difference. I walk into homes and I'm touching that countertop a little bit extra. Is that quartz, that granite? So it's most buyers aren't really that aware of what they're actually putting in a home, and so it's you're just looking at the whole big picture of that particular home. Your high-end D.R. Horton could be your low-end Mainview, kind of thing.
Okay.
Not too unrare.
Do you or do do appraisers in general try to, within reason, without being ridiculous, come in at value if you can? I mean, or do you just take your comps and that's it? This is what we got, this is what you get, or do you kind of, say you got 5 good comps, good souls, a couple were a little less, a couple were a little more. Do you kind of lean towards, it's a hard question, I know, do you kind of lean towards the sale?
You're trying to get me in trouble, aren't you? And you're trying to get it recorded, ain't you? I'm not falling for it. No, I'm just kidding.
Is there a standard like 5% buffer either way?
I have no standard whatsoever. No, that I can honestly say. Question: there's too many factors involved on every individual appraisal. So when you go to a development, and it's a new construction, you know, it's, Bonnie Lake's a great example. There's a couple of plats up there that are being, not Tehela, but they're being built right now. And people are coming in and putting another 50, 60 grand worth of upgrades in the house when the standard started at 500. It's kind of like, okay, give me the list of upgrades, going over to the other competing developments that are kind of doing the same thing. That's why, in my belief system, in my worth ethic, if I can spit out ethic, I make a lot of phone calls. You know, even on new construction. Hey, your house is pending at this. Is that what it's really pending at? Because that was back in April and I'm in July. No, we got all these things and they put all this stuff in, so they're putting another 50 grand. Oh, okay. Now that's a comparable. Because it's your basic same product, you know, a home is a home. You've got the same product, and this person's, their house is starting at 450. This house is starting at 460. They're putting 50 in. They're putting 50 in. I mean, it's the same type of product. So is it, hey, this thing must be worth 450 or this must be worth 460 because they're putting that amount in? You can't really say that, you know. But when you're dealing with a home outside, not new construction, you go out, you look for comparables, you put that. I mean, how do you do this? I mean, I didn't have that one house that I found was pretty close, a little far away, but it was still extremely close. And then you've got a range in there, and then I've got offers. If you've got more offers on a home, and you know, especially when things were kicking, you know, you have to talk to list. Hey, how many offers do you have? Where are they going at? Some offers are higher, some offers are lower.
So how do you take that in consideration?
I always take that in consideration.
Oh, do you?
Absolutely.
Adjustment or anything for that, is there?
No, I mean, it's more about what's market value. Because an appraisal is market value. So market value is what somebody's willing to pay for a house, right? Now, I can either agree with that market value or not agree with that market value. If I don't agree with it, I have to show you why. If I do agree with it, I have to show you why. If I think it's worth more than that market value, I have to show you why. Okay, so for somebody who came in, hey, do you have a 5% buffer? Do you have a... No, we just take everything into consideration, okay, and say, this is what our opinion is.
You run those numbers at the bottom and there you got it, right?
That's the best case scenario I can give you. You're trying to get me in trouble. Somebody else want to ask a question? No. Go ahead.
Do you ever take the listing price into, let's say that you had a house that was $525 and somebody made an offer of $560 and you had multiple offers on it. The agent went in, changed the price from $525 to $560. Does that make any difference to you at all?
I'll note it in the report.
Bad question.
No, it's not a bad question. I mean, I'll note it in the report.
Well, technically, we're not allowed to do that anymore through the MLS.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I saw a bulletin on it that we're not allowed to go in and change the list price to the contract price after we've gone under contract, or at that point. Like, say we listed at 550, went under contract for 575, changed the list price to 575 prior to the appraisal happening. I saw a bulletin that we're not allowed to do that anymore.
Oh, I missed that.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question? Thanks for getting me out of that.
Yeah. And on your logic about market value with, hey, somebody's willing to pay this price and taking into account multiple offers, how do you as an individual appraiser and some other individual appraisers not take that into account? Like, is there a set standard within the industry in your profession that states, hey, there's 10 offers on this house and they were all at $600,000 and we were only listed at $550, but when the market was going crazy for the last couple of years, the comps are only showing $525, $535. But the fact that they're willing to pay $600, even if it's only one offer, the market is willing to pay that price for the house, but we can't argue that.
Right.
So what is the standard on the appraisal side that says the market states that somebody's willing to pay this price, there's X amount of offers, or there's only one offer, so I either agree or disagree with that. How do you juggle that?
It's not about just what the market's willing to pay. It's more about what the market's willing to bear. So like you said, if I'm not mistaken, this is what I'm hearing. You're saying you had a bunch of offers that were up at $560, but you were listed at $525. And you had a bunch of homes that would be comparables during the day that I did the inspection, the effective date of my appraisal, that were selling at $525 and $535. I can't go in and say, hey, here's all my comparables. They're all selling for $525 and $535, which is what this house should be worth. But yet it's worth $560 because I got 5 people that say it's worth $560. Not going to happen.
So
Because it's...
That'd be really hard for you to come in at that 560 range.
No, it wouldn't be really hard.
Oh,
I wouldn't do it at all. Because the market's not bearing that. Okay?
If you had one pending at 575, same thing.
Still wouldn't do it.
Doesn't matter?
I mean, if even it's the identical house next door, if that house sold for $575 or it was pending at $575, but the whole rest of the market still at $535 and you got this one pending, it's going to be real hard for an appraiser to say, hey, this is worth $575.
I had exactly that situation. I had a closing at 535, had a listing at 525, and we had an offer of 560, and the neighbor down the street, corner lot, had a written offer of 575 or something like that, and it was pending. But, so somebody took into consideration the market, what was happening in the market, and how people were bidding these properties up, because we came in, thank God, at value. And then, of course, do you see the contract if somebody says, hey, we're going to pay $30,000 over the appraised value? So that's a little bit of a buffer for you, I guess.
I mean, again, we look at all of that. You know, in your particular scenario, it would be really hard for an appraiser to come and say, yeah, I understand the market's moving, and you know, we do adjust for time and stuff like that, you know, but it's only moving so far, and it's only moving so fast. I mean, we're kind of in a different situation now. We're still moving, but it's just moving at a lot slower pace.
Well, I think your job's going to be easier now than it was the last 2 years, don't you? I mean, because things sold for so much, and it's now people are paying costs, they're not paying over.
So now you have to look at it the other way around. Okay, so I've got a house right now. I'm just making a scenario that's selling for $500,000, and it listed for $490,000. So it's only $10,000 over list. Everything in the market that's sold over the last few days said that it's probably about $495,000, $500,000 right at value, right? But then you've got all the pendings and listings that are all around it that are all selling at $460,000. And listing at $460,000. What's the house going at? You know, all of those things, all those things you got to take into account. You know, so it doesn't necessarily make the job easier now.
You can't win, man.
Do you even use the pending? I mean,
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love calling agents. I mean, I've talked to so many agents, they'll say, I've never heard an appraiser. I'm like, well, I think I should be calling. Especially in the market we just had. It's like, I should be calling, okay, what's your house pending for? So I have an increasing market at 9% over, 16% over, you know, in the past year. And not right now, but in the past, it was 16, 20% wasn't uncommon. And so you're doing time adjustments that are almost 1.5% per month, you know, and then I've got 2 pendings that are pending. My house is selling for $500,000, and I got 2 pendings that are listing at $490,000 and $495,000. And they're right next door. These are the people I should be calling and say, you're really going for $490 and $495. Oh, no, we're pending at $550 and $585. Well, okay. So you look at that stuff, and one of them's 1,000 square feet smaller than mine. I know that's not happening. I feel sorry for that appraiser. And then the next one's probably the same size at $550. Okay, we're probably sitting okay. It's gonna work out in the appraisal and it's going to make sense, okay, which is the same direction we're going now, just kind of the opposite. And then that's why it's important to call, because the market didn't die out. The market just slowed down, in my opinion, you know. So it's not necessarily any easier, it's just different, you know. So, did I answer all the questions?
Kelly was wondering, I think I'm assuming her one that you did the appraisal on was a new construction in Clearwood.
Okay.
She was wondering, is because there's not a lot of new construction in Clearwood, is that why you went outside of Clearwood?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Anybody else? No? Okay. So,
I got
all
a
right.
quick one for you. Can you speak to why we see so much variance? And I get, and we know it, appraisals are very subjective. Each appraiser has their own approach within reason to the standard. Why is there so much variance from one appraiser to the next when it comes to an opinion of value?
It's an opinion. It's my best answer.
Yeah. How do
know.
we, as agents, listing agents, combat that or justify our values when it is so subjective and it is just an opinion?
Reconsideration of value?
How do we approach that in a more successful way? Because I have almost never gotten an adjustment on a reconsideration. What is your advice on how we as listing agents submit a reconsideration
A tactful reconsideration.
that has
without
more
offending
success?
Next question. I honestly really couldn't answer that question for you. I mean, that's like going into somebody's house and saying, hey, your house is amazing, and you stroke him, and you go in the same house, a different guy, this house is a pigsty, and you offend him. It's just, who knows?
Yeah.
You know, I've gotten reconsideration of values, and I will tell you this. Please don't send me a reconsideration of value with a comparable I've already used.
Yes.
That takes an appraiser and go, you know, I've had that 2 or 3 times, you know, and I've only had a reconsideration of value maybe 5 in over 20 years.
You will take the upgrades though in your reconsideration of the home that you're appraising.
Absolutely. An appraiser loves a list of things that was done to the house and when they were done. I'm not talking, hey, at 5:55 p.m., January 7th in 1982. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about in 2019, the kitchen was remodeled. It included the cabinets, the countertops, the backsplash, and the appliances. You know, something like, you know, flooring was done, all flooring was done in 2020. You know, something of that simple, because when we walk in, we see, and appraisers don't, okay, we're going to get me on the appraiser kick. I know you're roping me in here. To see remodel on a listing, and the only thing that was done was carpet and paint, we call that a rental remodel. And so that's not really a remodel. And then we get phone calls, you know, my house is remodeled, how come you had this, you painted it and you put carpet on and vinyl flooring? I mean, come on, guy. You know, so it's, a remodel is a remodel. And so I understand that your market, your clientele needs to see and hear other different things. But this is a prime example of what I'm talking about. You know, it's not a 3-car carport in a detached garage. You know, it's none of those represent any shape or form of a carport. The garage is enclosed and there's an enclosed full building on the other side. So that type of thing, and sorry, Mr. Agent guy, but that's the type of stuff that makes it hard on the appraiser, again, to do his job, to do the best he can for you. Because we're not out here as stinking agents and try to screw them over on their value. We're here to do our job the best way we can. And I'm not going to rush a job. I won't do it. If my phone calls aren't answered, I'll keep calling until they get answered. So I have the right information. So when somebody comes back and say, hey, I need an ROV, hey, this opinion sells this. Well, no, I talked to them, it's actually $30,000 less. you know. And I talked to Joe over there, and his is for 10,000 more, so no, it's not clear up there like you think it is. Those kind of answers that I already have them, you know. And so that makes us give you a better product, so you can present it so the lender can present it to what they want to do with it, and you guys see what it is.
Other than list of upgrades, recent upgrades, is there a way for us to tactfully give you information about what we are seeing, list of comps, list of upgrades, etc., anything else before, or leave it in the home for you when you go there, or email you, or say, hey, I have some information that can help you with your job? Is there a tactful way or an allowable way for us to do that to make your life easier?
Every appraiser is a different person.
Yeah.
That's my best answer. I love it. I have agent, hey, I got a hope, give it to me. I did a whole CMA, give it to me. I don't have to necessarily agree with it. Just let me see what you were thinking.
Yeah.
You know, where you can, I love that. And there are times where I have issues, and I'll call the listing agent and I'll say, where'd you come up with this? It's a prime example. Our development. I had a lady list our Division 3. She listed this house like $150,000 over what any house is worth in my house. And we had a house burned down like 2 years ago and it was completely rebuilt. And it was nice. And that thing sold for about $100,000 less than what she listed for. So I called her up. I got the job. I called her up and said, so tell me, you got a CMA for this? Where's it come from? What you got going? And she gave me this whole spiel. I said, well, if you could send me the CMA, that'd be great. And I told her, she sent me the CMA, and she gave, all of them were all over the place. None of them had anything to do with the development. So I called her back, and I said, so what about the development? You got this one, you got this one. And by the way, I live here. I would love for that house to be sold for that much, because then I'd sell my house next.
Yeah.
But I don't know where you came with that value. The job got canceled. Because it's not going to happen, you know. And that's, I love CMAs. I love getting, I guess I'm not like every other appraiser. I know people have bad experiences, but most of the people that work for our company, they'll take CMAs, they'll take extra listings. You know, I'm going to one tomorrow. They have got comps on the table. I said, great, I'll take them. You know, I like that.
Yeah, 'cause we walk a fine line with trying to tell you how to do your job, trying to influence the appraisal, things like that. So
right.
I just wanted to ask. But
it's going to be really hard to tell an appraiser how he does his job. I don't want to tell you guys how to, I'm outnumbered here. Maybe out the door I'll go, hey, you guys better do this, man. No, I'm just.
So are you noticing that you're having, or may end up having a lot more reconsideration of value come across?
I don't have that problem.
See that? Because of maybe the square footage thing that has changed for you guys?
No, I don't, and I haven't heard of anybody in our company who's had that yet. I have heard square footage complaints.
Yeah.
But then we say, well, we'll look at the report. So if you get a report and your square footage is completely whacked, look at the bottom of the grid first, and please read the report. That's the number one issue. We do get a lot of stuff from lenders that say, hey, do this, and you need to do this, and it's like, we already did that. Please read the report. And it's not something that's all the time. That's one of the big things that happen. You know, most of the lenders you work with are great. I could definitely say that.
A question. He said finishing an unfinished. Finishing an unfinished basement that it only adds a few dollars per square foot. What is the value of a finished basement if the height requirement is met?
That's a good question. That really depends on what else is in the market as comparables to give us that information. That's the best answer I can give. Because you'll go and some people will say their basement is finished. It's painted concrete floor, painted concrete walls, and they got a heat vent up in there, and it's got stairs that go upstairs. Is it finished? It's a low-grade finish. But my house that I'm doing is carpeted and tile on the floor, has a kitchenette, it's got ingress, egress outside the house. You know, that's finish.
That's just part of the square footage.
Yeah, so it's, and that's part of the big thing is your interpretation and my interpretation can be two different worlds, and it's the same thing with an appraiser. His interpretation and my interpretation can be two different worlds. And so that's what makes our job difficult. And that's why it is really good. If you do get a phone call from an appraiser, hey, just give him the best information you got. I mean, are you going to influence him? Probably not. But if you want to influence him, give him the best information you got. Like when I'm calling on basements is a good question because when an agent says partially finished, I'm like, okay, what does that mean? Because he's not telling me. And then you give me a picture of a basement that has a finished area, and then you show me a little room that's unfinished. And this could be a 1,000 square foot basement. Okay, is it half finished? Is it 75% finished? Does it just have a finished room? All those things matter because that helps us, if I'm using it as a comparable, that helps us decipher what use that is in that report. Okay, it's one thing if I'm inspecting the home because I'm going to go out and inspect it, and then I can determine what partially finished is and what isn't. It's another thing if there's a comparable out there, especially if you have a house that has that situation and your buddy down the street is listing it and another comparable and they say partially finished and you're calling him and yours is more finished than his and you're the same identical home and his is selling for $5 and yours is selling for $5.10, well, but mine's partially finished. Joe, because, I'd like to know, that helps. And I understand. Trust me, I get it. We don't have a lot of room to put a lot of particulars on it. I am speaking solely from an appraiser's point of view, right? So I do understand, Sharia schooled me in the art of a little bit of understanding as do, because we used to live across the street from each other. She's always banging on my door. Hey.
When you're talking about reconsideration, I've been doing this for a long time.
Okay.
And I like that you call agents because sometimes maybe they can give you something that nobody else has, or maybe they can and maybe they can't.
Right.
But I have never in my career, I managed an office full of people, got a appraisal change. You know what I mean? Once it was turned in, I just told my people that's etched in stone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've never in my career been able to get one actually changed. Now, what we've done is dropped like VA financing and remarketed the home that they
right.
Or we've just turned away from the deal. Of course, if it's FHA, it sits with it for 6 months, right? FHA appraisals, are they?
What do you mean?
If you get an FHA appraisal on a property, you can't have it re-evaluated FHA for 6 months. Is that different?
I'll have to look at that. I thought it was 90 days.
Oh, is it? Well, maybe it is now.
I could be wrong. When it comes to FHA, I like to go read the regs before I answer a question.
Have you ever been, or do you know of any appraiser that's ever actually turned in an appraisal that has been overruled? I mean, I'm sure they've two?
I have. I've done one.
One?
Just one that I can remember.
Now, did they redo the appraisal completely, or did they come back to you?
No, I just got I was given additional, nice to meet you, sir, given additional information in the market. These are two great comparables that they weren't initially noticed. And these actually reflect my subject property, which gives me I think now because of these and this recognition that this house should be worth more. And the market and my range bears that. Now, if you're looking for $30,000 more and you give me these two comps, I said, no, but they do, I see that they add value to this. You may not get $30,000 because I can't, or $29.95, it's just, you may get, hey, I think this should be up here now instead of down where I had it at. I did not see that before. It's hard to do a reconsideration of value because a lot of guys take the appraisal personally. So you're attacking me when you're giving me that reconsideration of value. And it's anybody would, anybody's like that. We all that human nature, right? Hey, I did a great job, dude. What are you saying? Right? It's, come on, that kind of thing.
I actually had my own personal house across from Marshall that came in at $379, and the purchase price they offered 410, and he only appraised it for 379. So
The appraiser,
Yeah, the appraiser.
not me.
Yeah,
The
the appraiser. And VA appraisal, it was.
Yeah.
So I asked for reconsideration, and I supplied him with all the comps that he had and all the upgrades that we had in our house listed. And he graciously, went through everything, and it came in at what?
Yeah, but wasn't that originally a drive-by appraisal?
Yes,
Yeah.
because of COVID, they did a drive-by.
Yeah.
And so I took the pictures inside of all the remodeling and stuff that we did, and, with, some dates and.
Did you do that appraisal?
No.
No, it wasn't me.
He did not.
I wouldn't do it because if I brought it in low, I know she'd be mad at me, so I ain't doing it.
VA, when COVID hit, VA did all their appraisals by drive-by. So
Yeah, I did a lot of
pretty much
externals at that
what
time.
you had in your listing and the knowledge that they knew, that's all they knew. They didn't get to know anything further than that.
Right.
But, I mean, he could have very well called me and, said, hey, can you send me some more pictures?
Right.
Whatever, but we asked for the reconsideration, and we did get what we were.
That was a sale too.
Yeah.
So it can happen.
Okay.
Very nice. The guy was very nice. He didn't, I don't think he felt attacked at all. I guess it's how you approach it.
Yeah. Be nice to people. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, be nice.
So, any other questions? So I want to kind of wrap this up here. So I talked about the things that affected this house. I did find, I had to go further to find a detached structure that was similar to mine. I found a house that was really close. I mean, it's just down the street, just sold, that was smaller, and actually sold over mine. And it also had a detached garage. It wasn't as nice as mine, but it solidified where this house was sitting at. And then like you were talking about going to a bigger property, I went and found another bigger property that had a large detached structure. Most of the homes I used, and this is just the way I like to do things if it's available, most of the homes I used all had some type of detached structure except one. That was the first thing. And the second thing, this was a larger lot. I know 11,000 square foot lots, not really that big down here, but in Tacoma, that's a pretty big lot. So that forced me also to extend out a little bit, to bracket. So the point I'm trying, and I already said I found one that's on Arterial Road. The point I'm trying to make is, and I better say this, and all three of them were in the last 90 days. So in an appraisal, lenders want us to get comparables that sold and closed within the last 90 days. Okay? And so all these parameters as an appraiser faces. This should kind of help you understand when you're looking and listing your properties that, hey, I have all these additional factors. Just because you have this detached structure doesn't mean it adds another $100,000 on it because that's the way I look for it. It behooves you to go out in the last year and try to find properties that are like yours and see what's happening to them. Or look at your property like it's sitting in a basket and yours is the apple, right? And then you go out and you find some bananas, you go out and find some oranges, you find a couple of pineapples, and then you may get lucky and find another apple. But then you have to take those things, and I know they teach you these stuff. I'm just trying to kind of reiterate that you take these things and you, hey, I'll pull this out for this, put this in for this, and kind of get a grid for where you're at. Or even just, hey, this is where it's sitting. I got stuff selling between 4 and 5, and this one doesn't have a garage, or I'm coming up for 4. Just simplistic thought process like that will help you get a better idea of the CMA that you're looking at when you get that information. Most people aren't too far off. They really aren't. And really, you get your answer when the market comes and says, knocking on the door, says, hey, we'd like to offer that. I know that's where it comes from, but does that make sense?
I noticed there's a few people in our office that are actually not doing the adjustments. Maybe it's they don't know how to do the adjustments.
Right. And it's hard to do an adjustment if you're not functioning in that aspect. And that's why I'm saying if, you just kind of generalize in your head, hey, if this one's sold for 500, it doesn't have a garage, and I have a detached garage, mine's worth more than that. I've got this one over here that's sold for 450, and it's a detached garage, same just like mine. And then I've got the same house and everything. And then I got this one up here that's sold for, 495. It's got a large detached garage, and the house is, 500 square feet bigger than mine. So I must be somewhere in this mid-range, and then off of that, then you start looking at your upgrades and all the things that's been done to the house. I mean, that's really what your CMA is about, right? Yeah?
Right.
Okay, so when you're doing that, it's, when you give me your CMA, I'm like, okay, where'd they come? It's when I see a CMA, if I ask for one, and I'm like, where did you get that from? Why did you even use that? That's 5 miles away, and you're in Tacoma. I mean, there's no reason for that. And why didn't you just use this comp that was right next door? It's just like your house. It's stuff like that. And I know that's extreme. I made that stuff up, by the way. But it's just, if I can nicely put it, taking all of that information like you normally do, and no, you're not doing adjustments, but you are getting a grid. If you've been an agent for a while, you do have a grid for where a lot of the stuff sits at, in your own thought processes. Just like he was saying, how come this appraiser does this and this appraiser does that? It's the same thing with you guys. How come you guys look at it this way and you look at it this way?
So we're seeing a lot of price adjustments in the market right now. And would you suggest, and this is what I've been doing with my own listing, because I'm actually redoing the comps almost every couple weeks and sending it to my, because I'm seeing the prices go down from the last 3 months. Are you guys going to be doing, how many months will you be going out when you're doing your comps? Are you going to go out 5 months ago compared to now's time?
I go out to where I need the comparables
Okay.
that I'm selecting. Like I said, we have to do 2 comparables within 90 days. And then we have to use either 2 pendings, 2 actives, or an active and a pending. And then the other one is whatever we deem as a good comparable for that property. The issue that you run into if you start looking at time is you're going to get a lot of, backlash if, why didn't you use the home that sold 4 months ago instead of the home that you used 6 months ago? What's your reasoning for that? Is it just marketing time? Well, marketing time that's adjusted for and rectified within the report. So people get in trouble when they start looking for that one back there and then try to bring it forward. And I understand if it's like, let's say I've got a track home and the only track, and in that track home, it has a large detached garage shop. Let's say we're talking about Lacamas Estates down in Roy. And the only thing that's sold in there in the last year are all homes with no detached garage shop. So I have to go outside of that development, find me a home, whether it be on larger acreage or not, with a detached garage shop. If none of them sold within the last 4 months, then I'll go back 5 months. Oh, here I have one's 5 months. What does that look? Actually, I have 3 at 5 months. Now, which one of these is more reflective of my property? Now I have a reasoning and an understanding for the lender to say, this is why I went here, because there were none here, and so I had to go outside of the development, and this reflects my detached structure. And it's not an atypical situation for the market area. And I'll also say, hey, in the plat, there are a lot of homes that have these structures. They just haven't sold in the last year. So that's kind of how you would address that issue. And then
it changed so quickly from when I first did the comps to,
right.
A month. Now it's been on 35 days, and it's changed a lot.
Right.
So.
And again, I don't personally think the market's going down. I think out of nervousability,
I'm pretty
and
sure
is probably the #1 factor. I mean, I told you I was moving. I don't want to sell yet because I don't know what's going on, especially where I want to go. I want to go crazy. Huh?
And who's your agent?
I don't have one yet. I got a couple in a hat.
Yeah.
I'm trying to.
Hey, I got a quick question. Seems like not majority, but a large number of the underappraised properties, that come in low, seem to be VA. Now, is there a different criteria for that, or it's all the same?
It's all the same.
Just a coincidence?
Don't know.
Okay.
No idea. I no longer do VA, so I don't know. Couldn't answer that question. Yes, sir.
When you bring the pending house to the report, are you bringing the listing price or the one that you called and talk with the agent?
Pending price. Yeah. The pending price could be the same as the listing price.
Because you said
But if I talk to the agent and I get my information, I will use the pending price. Now, there's a big if with that. For me, somebody says, let's say the house listed at $400. My house that I'm appraising is selling for $430. I've got two houses that are pretty much similar, and they're both selling. They're both listed at $415. And I call up, and one says it's pending for $500. And I'm looking at that, and I'm looking at the market, and I'm like, there is no way you're getting that. Okay, and I don't even have to appraise that house to say that's not happening, because this other one's listed here. It's the same house, and it's going for mine or maybe a little bit higher. Okay, that's a usable comparable. So I have to decipher the same thing you guys have to decipher, and saying, hey, just because some agent, I actually had an agent. I was looking at a house. It was a pending sale, and she said that this is a couple years ago, and she called down. She says, yeah, we had this one offer from this guy come down from Bellevue to buy this house. And he offered me $100,000 over list. And I had another one that was selling for like $4, and they were getting, the offer was $460. I wasn't appraising the house. I was using it as a pending. And we didn't take this one because I knew that this wouldn't happen in this market, and I didn't want my sellers to go through that. And she was right. There's no way that thing was going to appraise for $500. It was right around the corner from my house. I knew better. You know, so it's when we have to decipher that kind of stuff when we're using those pendings in a report. And it's a little bit more in the past that we just went through. I would also ask, do you have a 22 AD on top of this? That would be another deciding factor. Because, you know, again, if you don't call, and then you're going to be calling me back with an ROV. And I don't have time for an ROV. I'd much rather have all the information up front. Because you're going to be doing the same thing.
Well, and there's an extra cost even for
Right.
the buyers.
Exactly. So I'm just saying that if I don't get all this information up front and decipher that information and be able to use correct information in my report, then it's going to cause a lot of problems. And then agents that don't call me back or call the appraiser back and say, hey, no, this is what this is doing. This is what's going on. Do you got a 22? Yeah, I got a 22 AD, way over the top. Okay, that helps me decide it. Even though I see that pendings for 400, I know it's going to be 460 because their 22 AD is 60 grand. You know what I mean? That's what that house is going to be. If I never called that person and I used that house after it closed, that's what it's going to reflect in county records, that it sold for 460. And if your house doesn't close before that and we're in that situation and it happens to close the next day, what's the first thing you guys are going to do? You're going to call me, hey, this house over here just sold for 460. What's up? You know, kind of thing. And that's why I like to make those phone calls. It does take me a little bit longer to do appraisals, but on the back end, it saves me a little bit more time.
How often do you have to go back out actually and for silly things that aren't done, like smoke detectors, or is that what are you seeing a lot of that still?
Not anymore.
You know, straps on your hot water heater.
Not anymore. Straps aren't really my requirement. Straps are a lender requirement. So we just report that they're there, or they're not there, or they're not properly done. And so we don't, it's what we, I mean, it can be an issue for them, but you go to a manufactured home, it's in a closed, tight space, and there's no straps on it. I mean, it's, okay, I'm not saying it's wrong or it's right. I'm just saying that it's up to the underwriter to decide whether they want to address that or not. We just say whether they're on or they're not on. You know, the more of the issue is more of a safety factor. So, like if you walk out of a garage door, I had this quite a while ago, and the water tank, it's typical that the water tank's usually kind of right there, close on one side or the other, and there's no overflow pipe, and that overflow opening is facing right towards the doorway. To me, that's a safety issue. I don't know about other appraisers. I will call for that. It's a safety issue. That needs to be taken care of, you know.
Could we as brokers save the time and the money? Actually, I always try to make sure that the things that I know that need to be done, smoke detectors, CO, you know, that they're done.
Yeah.
So you're not noticing really that it's even an issue where you have to go back out for those kind of silly things, or will
Right.
you allow them to take a picture? Okay, there's a CO2, or maybe the appraiser didn't notice it. I've had that happen before.
Yeah. So I've had,
Agents pretty much point that out to the sellers now.
yeah.
I think
The
so.
smoke detector is more of an issue than anything else,
Really?
because you've got to have smoke detector in a house. I had to go out one time from where I live all the way out to Packwood for a CO detector. I was not happy,
Yeah.
and it wasn't on me, you know. So but that's the only time I've ever had to go out for a CO detector that I can think of.
As far as your smoke detectors, your requirement is in each room?
Each room, hallways, main areas. It's kind of what that's what the state requires. It's not our requirement. Again, we just report that they're there.
You talk about, you call agents sometimes, and I do get calls from appraisers and stuff. And generally what I'll do when I get a call from appraisers, I'll help them as much as I can. If there were extenuating circumstances or anything like that.
Right.
Then I capture them in my phone with their phone number,
Right.
their name, and then when I come up with something, hey, you know, quick question, what would you give for a 3-car garage versus a 2-car garage? And generally I'll get a good answer from an appraiser on that. But do you get called back much? I mean, am I bothering those appraisers by doing that? Or?
I don't get called back much. I have discussions normally when I've called, when I'm calling and we're on the phone. They say, hey, can I ask you a quick question, kind of thing. If I can answer it, I try to answer it. It's really hard for an appraiser to say, hey, that garage stall, yeah, $4,000.
Yeah,
You-
rule of thumb or something.
Yeah, you know, it's just, you can't do it. Each area is different, each place is different, you know, and that kind of thing. So it's really hard for an appraiser to give that kind of answer, you know, unless it's really definitive. Back in the day, South Prairie used to be, if you didn't have a garage, you didn't sell over $100,000. Period. You know, I mean, that's the first, if I had a house come across listed for $100,000. Got a garage? Okay. We'll see. But, I mean, I'm talking a long time ago, you know. But, okay, can I go now?
Thank you, Mark.
Am I getting out of the lion's den?
Thank you. We appreciate you.
Doing it for the cause, right?